Here's a prime reason why maybe it's not such a good idea to buy this type of crap off of Amazon or eBay for that matter, because the quality of the new stock leaves a lot to be desired. This was a very expensive experiment on my part, and I wish I hadn't gone down that road because, well, you'll see. Check it out. In today's video, we're going to repair the DV connector on this camera because you see this heavy, thick, ugly DV firewire has damaged the connector. Watch. That's the problem with these cheap firewire cables. In the past, I've talked about why the Sony cable is so flimsy. Well, that's the reason. These heavy cables tend to put a lot of stress on the connector itself just from the weight of the cable, and it's broken the one on the camera. I use this camera just as a converter because this is the DV deck that the analog outputs don't work, so I just keep it connected to this camera, and then I can use this to change it over to S-video, for example. So basically the camera is basically just used because the analog output doesn't work on this DV deck, so that I can actually see what's on the tape when I'm going to transfer. And then if I'm going to transfer it over to another format, I'll take the FireWire and plug it into my other devices and do it that way. But anyway, these heavy FireWire cables, they are not good. They cause a lot of damage. So see, if I sit it up like that, it'll cut it out. See? Yeah, so I gotta fix that, and we're gonna do that in this video. So as we saw, the FireWire, the DV connector, is broken, and that's just from using cables that are a little bit excessive. Monster cables, for example. That's what causes those to break. I normally don't use those type of cables, but the one Sony one that I've got is pretty short, and for some things it just didn't work for me. So I ordered a longer cable off of Amazon. It was not expensive, but it's also not very flexible, and well, I've already suffered the first failure, and it didn't take long for it to damage the connector on this camera, which is specifically used as a digital 8 playback device only, because this particular camera, this is a parts camera. I'll be stealing parts off this one. Some of my other ones wear out. It's got the same mechanism as the 240. This is it's a 250? Yeah, DCR TRV 250. However, this one does not support analog playback. It's digital playback only. And basically what I use this thing for the most part, this camera, is just as a view screen, because the analog outputs on my DHR 1000 don't work. So if I'm using it for timing tapes or just previewing, I normally just plug it into this little camera, because I don't use this for anything else, and use it to view the output. It's broken on here, so let's take it apart and see if I can remedy it. I'm hoping it's just broken solder connections, but I won't know until I get in. I think by this point the DV was on a separate little circuit board. The early cameras, the DV connector was right on the main board, and if it broke, a lot of times you had to change the main board. I'm ignoring the phone because it won't be for me. The phone is never for me. This camera isn't even usable as a camera. The CCD imager is dead, so there's no picture from it. But it plays. It'll record and play digital 8 tapes, no problem. That part works, but the imager is shot on this one. So this one was sent in for repair a while back, and once we found out the imager was shot, the guy just said, yeah, just keep it. So I did, as a playback machine. Well, not so much as a playback machine, because I can use my other machines for playback. It's basically just being kept for parts. That's it. Lots of good parts I can use out of this one. The entire transport. In fact, one of the 240s I've got right now, I've got because I had another 250 shipped in and donated to me. It actually worked. Everything worked on it. The camera worked on it. Everything worked on it. I ended up taking the chassis out because I had a 240 that somebody had ripped apart to take a tape out and just destroyed the chassis, and then it gave it to me. So I pulled the chassis from the 240 or from the 250, and I put it on the 240 and made it fully functional. And then I went and gave away the 250 as a transport trash, but hey, you can use it as a webcam type of thing, and gave it away. I should have kept it. If I had kept it, I could have subbed the camera block onto this one and made this one work, but it's okay. This was just a camera that I got this after I gave the other one away. I got this one sent after, and this one here again was only going to be kept for stealing the parts off it when I needed to fix one of my other ones. But I was using it to preview tapes until the connector broke here. I don't know if it's the connector or whether it's where it plugs in. It's probably the connector right here. Let's get a close-up and see if there's any cracked connections. Oh, those bad boys look there. I'll go get the connector and plug it in and wiggle it and see if any of these pins move. This is the problem. Cables are so thick, right? The little Sony cable is so dainty and flimsy compared to this. And that's how these companies could market. They say, oh, we got a better cable. This will get your signals transferred better. Yeah, no, it won't. It won't make any difference on the signals transferred. They're digital. What it will do is add extra stress just due to the weight of the cable and how stiff it is. It'll just add extra stress to the equipment and break it as it's done here. And believe me, I caught Supreme SH1T from my old boss because I made a comment. Somebody had a, I think it was a DCR VX1000, and they broke the connector. And on that one, it was not on a separate board. It was part of the main board. It was $600 for the board. And first time it was replaced under warranty. Second time it wasn't. And I told the customer, well, it's because you're using those crappy monster cables that are just they're too thick. They cause too much stress. I told them that. Well, they'd bought the monster cable from the shop. So obviously, because the technician told them that the monster cable was crap, they wanted their money back. And of course, the shop didn't want to give them their money back. So guess who caught shit over that one? Me. It doesn't look like they're moving. I don't see any movement here, but we know there's a problem because it was cutting in and out. So I guess I'll just resolder these pins here. That one looks like maybe it's bad. It's hard to tell on camera because I'm not looking on a high resolution screen. I'll get the magnifiers on and take a closer look at that one and see. Obviously they're bad because when I flex it, it cuts in and out. So obviously we know the problem's here. I got the lights on here so I can see what I'm doing. I don't know if you guys will be able to see what I'm doing once I get in there with the iron and my goggles on. See if I can just reflow those connections, and then I'll take it inside and see whether it still hacks up. It also might be easier if I remove the board. So we'll do that. We'll remove the board and work on it outside of the camera. Probably get a closer up shot too, because it's now, yeah, a little bit closer, because now it's right down on the at the focal length of the lens here. Up here it's out of focus, you see, but down here it's in focus. This is the limit. It's like 2 feet away, I think. Let's get in here and work. See, Sony learned from their previous mistakes and made this replaceable because so many people broke them. Reconnect the two connectors. One of them is for the buttons on the side and the other one is for the display. I think this one's the display one here. Alright, in the house we go to check it. Well, now it doesn't work at all. I've broken it. Now I've really messed up. Now I gotta go back and see what the hell's wrong with it. It must be not connected properly at that connector. And I know that it does work because if I plug the cable into the other camera, I have a picture. So the cable's fine. It's the camera connector that was bad before and now it's worse. So back to the drawing boards. Unfortunately, it's actually the plug itself. I gave it a closer look, and one of the pins is actually broken off. When I heated it up with the iron, I could see the pin floating freely going through the board, so it's broken somewhere between the board and the connector. And I think if we look into here, you can probably see there's one pin that seems to be sticking up. This camera has extremely good macro, but I don't have a lot of light in here to see what I'm looking at. But anyway, that connector itself is shot. That's why it's not working. So can't fix this one. This will just have to go back to being a parts donor camera. Here's a better shot. You can see the pin. Looks like one pin has come loose. Anyway, I'd have to change that connector, and I'm not really in any mood to do that. This was a camera that I got for nothing because the CCD is shot, but the transport works. So I was keeping it specifically so that I can rebuild. I have two 240s, and of course they all use the same parts mechanically. So that's why I was keeping this. I was keeping it just as a parts wrecker for future use, and I'll throw it back into its box and it will be a parts wrecker. I don't know if that was the one that caused the problem. Yeah, I don't know whether this, I mean that firewire connector could have been damaged before I got it. Say it was a free camera. So one last thing before I shut it down. Really? 700 times, 20 times optical, 700 times digital zoom. Well, considering these things had only about a 250k pixel sensor, what, 700 times, that would get you down to what, about 10 pixels? About 10 by 10 pixel? You'd be looking at sugar cubes blinking off and on the screen. Didn't make a lot of sense. But this camera looks like it's had a lot of hours. Look at the buttons, right? I mean, it looks like there's been a lot of wear, people pushing buttons on here. It just looks like it's had a lot of use. The rewind one. So I think the camera probably had a lot of hours on it, a lot of use. If I show you my 240, which I do use for archiving, so mine does have a lot of use, and mine doesn't have that much wear on it. For example, here's my 240. Now this one's had hundreds upon hundreds of tapes put through it. And here's the 250. You can see that looks like it's got a fair bit of wear just from the wear on the buttons. And this one has a lot of use. It doesn't look any worse. Again, the difference between the two of these. This one only plays back digital 8. This one will play digital 8 and high 8 and regular 8. It records only digital 8, but this one has analog playback. And then they came out with a cheaper version for people that didn't need the analog playback capability. Other than that, The main boards are different, but the transports are identical. In fact, this particular camera here, this is the one that I did the little modification on to give me easy access to clean the heads, so I don't have to take the camera apart. This particular camera is the one that's got the guts from the last 250 that I ripped apart the steel parts out of. And that again is what this one's going to be going back to. This is going to be put back in a box and just sit there until I need it to fix one of the other. I've got two of these, so when I need to fix one of these, I'll be taking parts off this. To add insult to injury, it was this freaking cable. Amazon special. Look at the pin. That's the same pin that's not working in the camera. Why it worked when I plugged it into the other camera, I guess I was lucky I didn't F up my other camera, but yeah, there's the reason why. That's what happens when you buy the Amazon special. I'd buy another Sony cable if I could as a spare, but of course they don't make them anymore. This is the sheet that's out there now. Pay your money, take your chances. Fortunately, I haven't had this cable. There's the other end of it. It's fine. And then you go to this end. I'm even looking at it there. I could see something was up, but when we look inside here, you'll see that there's one pin that's riding a little high, and that is what damaged the camera. And the camera does not work. The camera does not work with the other cable. So this cable damaged my camera. Back to Amazon it goes. I haven't had it that long. I've got till July 1st to return it, so off it goes today. And I left them a piece of my mind in their comments that it damaged the camera, but that's not going to do anything. They're not going to replace that. But live and learn. Don't buy these cheap cables. It'll cause you more headaches. That's the bag it came in. I still had the original bag. So back to Amazon this one goes, and I get my $15 or $16 back. They just said, what do you want to do? Want a refund? I said, yep. So they sent me a QR code and told me to take it to the closest Staples store, show them the QR code, and they will send it back. So that's where it's going. It's going back to where it came from, where they can scrap it, or more than likely sell it to somebody else where they'll break their equipment. Thanks for watching.